Hello, everyone. This is Glenn Hodges. Welcome to Chattanooga Self-Improvement Meetup, a mastermind group where we listen, learn, ask questions, and comment in an effort to help make each other the best version of ourselves. We're very pleased to have with us our very special guest and speaker that has been with us before, Paul Lee, retired captain, Chattanooga Police Department. Executive Director, Fellowship of Christian Peace Officers, USA. Paul is a retired Chattanooga Police Department captain with 29 years of law enforcement service. He has worked on several specialized units, including Federal Task Force, 5 years as a hostage negotiator, and 5 years on the SWAT team. He has been a member of the FCPO since 1995, former chapter chairman, and has served in various capacities on the national board. Paul and his wife, Donna, have 5 adult children and 4 grandchildren. Paul, we're glad to have you with us today. Let's learn a little bit about the side of law enforcement no one talks about. It's all yours, buddy.
Well, thank you, Glenn. Thank you for the invitation. We see the news constantly, and we see what the news portrays, but there's a side of law enforcement that rarely gets talked about. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that this morning, and I'm going to let you know a little bit about the history of the Fellowship of Christian Peace Officers, what we do, and what we're doing about this problem that we've got in law enforcement. Many people don't realize that nationally, law enforcement has a 75% divorce rate among its officers. Not only that, we've got a 40% domestic violence rate. Now, that really doesn't mean that officers are beating their spouses or anything like that. But when these men and women come home from a day of solving everybody else's problems, excuse me, what they come home to is being a husband or a wife, and nothing's changed. When they come home, you didn't take the trash out. It's your turn to watch the kids. It's, feed the dog. All the things that happen in a normal household, they have to come back to and immediately transition into that husband or that wife. And sometimes that doesn't work well. And then you've got the officers snapping at their spouses, at their children. And the next thing you know, the whole family's walking around on eggshells. And, while that's not domestic violence, that's mental abuse, and they don't even realize a lot of time it's happening. We've got a 25% alcohol and prescription drug abuse rate where they self-medicate. And then every year, our suicide rate outdoes our line of duty death rate each year. And you've got to realize our line of duty death rate encompasses heart attacks, car crashes. It's not just the murders of police officers. So if you just counted the murders of police officers, it'll double the death rate. So we kill ourselves at a far, far higher rate than the criminal community does. And when we get to looking at why that is, what's going on in law enforcement, the only thing that I can figure out, and this is from being able to deal with police departments and talk to officers all across the nation. And this is just a best guess because there's absolutely no statistics on it. But my best guess is that only about 3% of the 800,000 to 1 million law enforcement officers we have in this country, about 3% would be what we call followers of Jesus Christ or born again Christians. In other words, they live their lives daily, just like they would live it on Sunday or Saturday as they're going to church. And that means that the rest of them, the 97%, are trying to do this job in their own strength. And there's just not a way to do it in your own strength. It's just too demanding these days. We got started in 1974. We've been around for 46 years. There were 2 Los Angeles police officers who thought they were the only Christians in the Los Angeles Police Department who inadvertently attended the same Bible conference in Los Angeles and bumped into each other. And I tell people at that particular time in Los Angeles Police Department history, the Christian population doubled from 1 to 2. There were 2 of them now. And while they were standing there kind of rejoicing, they got to looking around and go, wait a minute, that guy's LAPD and that guy's LAPD. And they found 4 or 5 other guys. And so they got them all together and they were like, well, now what are we going to do? So they started meeting at the training center at LAPD once a week to do nothing but read scripture and pray. And that's where this ministry started 46 years ago. Our mission is to create a Christian mindset in law enforcement officers using biblical truths to transform their lives, their families, and their communities. See, we believe if we're not using biblical truths to operate by every day, then we have to ask ourselves, whose truth are we using? You know, are we using a misguided politician's truth? Are we using a misguided supervisor's truth? You know, whose truth are we using? And we find that if we stick with biblical truth, then there's nothing that can refute that. It just is what it is. It's just absolute truth. Our purpose is to change the face of law enforcement nationally. You know, right now, law enforcement has a black eye. And, you know, truth be known, we've caused some of that. And we've caused some of that ourselves, but we've got a black eye. And right now is like no other time. Everything that's happening in law enforcement right now, we see the media attack, we see the politicians attack, we see the administrations turning against the officers. I experienced all of that in my 29 years. The thing is, I never experienced it all at the same time like these guys are. You know, it happened in different spells. We would have politicians that would get angry at us. That would go away eventually. We would have administrations that would get angry. That would go away. The media, you know, was a constant on us, but it would go away. But never at the same time has all of them attacked law enforcement like it is right now. And if you think about it, law enforcement is probably the only profession in the country where everybody outside the profession tells the profession what to do and makes the rules. If you stop and think about it, doctors, nobody outside the medical community makes rules for them. Nobody outside the community of lawyers. I mean, if you think about it, politicians that have never been on the job, community leaders that have never been police officers, all of these people come together and they tell us what to do. So it's unique. There's a lot of stress that comes in with that. But anyhow, how do we take care of this issue that we've got? You know, the divorce rate and the domestic violence and the suicide, because that's huge. If we can curb that, then we'll start producing better officers on the street. And we start with the officers' personal spiritual growth. As they join the Fellowship of Christian Peace Officers, we work on them specifically. The first thing we do is give them a one-year Bible. And a one-year Bible is laid out to where you can just turn to today's date and start reading and turn a few pages, and then it's tomorrow. And by this time next year, you will have read through the entire Bible. And we encourage that because if they're not in God's Word, they don't know what God's Word says. We also have developed, or in the process of really developing, a good field training officer program. Now, this is called discipleship. It's one-on-one. We're actually working with the Navigators Ministry also on this and several others, to where officers can sit down with each other one-to-one and disciple each other on biblical truths and how to operate on the job in a biblical manner. We also have numerous online resources at our website. We have a daily devotional that comes out, and it's different every day, and it's written by a police officer for police officers. We also provide Right Now Media to all of our members. And I don't know if you know what Right Now Media is, but Right Now Media is like the Netflix of video Bible studies. There's over 10,000 videos in their library, and they can watch these on their phone, on any electronic device. It's for the entire family, so the family can sit together and watch. The videos actually start at things like VeggieTales and go all the way through breaking down the books of the Bible. They have leadership, they have financial planning, they have things for men, things for women, things for kids. It's just full of stuff for them to watch. But then we work on the family spiritual growth. We work on the officer first. If we don't get him fixed, if we don't get him calibrated, then it's hard to work into the family. So we move into the family. We offer marriage retreats around the country. We'll take our chapters and we'll bring in people to conduct a marriage retreat with them so they can come together as a family. We use Crown and Dave Ramsey financial planning because these guys get themselves in financial trouble right out of the gate. When they come on the job, most of them, that's their very first job. Now think about that. Their very first real job is becoming a police officer. And they've been given an awesome responsibility. They have the right to kidnap people and arrest them. You're just arrested. They have the right to be judge and jury, and if necessary, executioner. This is a huge responsibility for a 21-year-old. And the first thing they do as a 21-year-old kid is they run out and they'll buy a car, a brand new car, and then they're stuck because now they have to start working extra jobs and everything else just to make those ends meet. They can't even pay their rent. And they've got a family, so they start working all these extra jobs, and on top of the extra jobs, now they're not home with their family, and you see how the cookie starts to crumble. And that runs right back into that 75% divorce rate. So we try to teach them financial responsibility. In fact, we have one of our members right now is doing the first time online a Dave Ramsey course for a number of officers. And if that's successful, then we're going to start moving that nationwide and doing it like we're doing this meeting right here. Just do it on Zoom. We also encourage chapter family fellowships for the chapter and the entire family, the children, everybody just to come together and fellowship. And they get to do that however they want to. Of course, it's kind of hard right now with COVID, but we're looking forward to getting back with that. And then we look at their chapter or their group spiritual growth. We work on their personal spiritual growth. We work on their family spiritual growth. And now we're looking at their group or their chapter spiritual growth, because here's where they start making a difference out in the community. There's a number of very good police organizations out there, like the Fraternal Order of Police, the Police Benevolence Association, and things like that. But these associations are member-driven. In other words, they take care of their members. And that's the way they're set up. They're supposed to. That's what they do. We're just the opposite. Even though we do have members, we take care of everybody. We teach them to go minister to officers wherever they are, wherever they're in need. We've had guys that have gotten into financial trouble with sick children, where they couldn't meet their bills. Well, the chapters have come along and paid some of their bills for them. We've had officers that have been involved in car wrecks or motorcycle wrecks and needed a handicap ramp. The guys go build a handicap ramp. It doesn't matter who they are. They go minister to these officers where they are. They don't have to be a member. And then on top of that, if there's really nobody to minister to, they go out into the community and they look for community needs. And they'll raise the money and take care of that need in the community. So this puts a whole new face on law enforcement. And it's a face that you won't see on the 6 o'clock news. We have one group in Miami that actually does drive-through prayers. They will set up, and instead of pray for a cop, They have big old signs that say, let a cop pray for you. And people are backed up for blocks. So these cops can pray for them as they drive through. So, getting back into the public, that's huge. That's just extremely huge. But real fast, let me tell you why I serve. And this is important. This is why I get so passionate about this ministry and why I love cops so much. My daddy was a cop. My uncle was a cop. It's kind of the family business. Thankfully, none of my children went that route. They're all doing other things. But that's all I ever wanted to be. And I love cops, because I know what they do. But those statistics in the beginning, the 75% divorce rate, the 40% domestic violence, the 25% alcohol, that was me. I was that guy. That was me for almost 20 years. And I was trying to do the job in my own strength, and it just about killed me. People ask me, were you suicidal? Well, if I ever commit suicide, I want you all to scream and yell at the authorities. No, he didn't. Somebody murdered me. I did not kill myself, but I did take chances that I shouldn't have taken. I knew deep down inside that if I got killed in the line of duty, my family, my divorced family and children, they would get money from the state, from the government. I would die a hero. They would have a big funeral for me. It would just be glorious, and they would say all kinds of good things because to put it in hillbilly language, I was messed up as a pile of coat hangers. I had no business even being on the street. I couldn't take care of myself. I was miserable. And it was on October 16th, 1995, that I had a life-changing experience and with Jesus Christ. And nothing has been the same since. And it wasn't long before I was introduced to this local chapter of the Fellowship of Christian Peace Officers. I didn't know they existed. And from there, I started getting discipled. These guys took me in and started discipling me. The importance of that one-year Bible, we got challenged to read through the Bible in a year. So we got those Bibles, and we did it. And, being OCD cops, when January 1 rolled around again, we had to do it again. And Lord willing, this December 31st will mark my 24th year of reading through the Bible. I don't say that as a brag. It became a spiritual discipline that I feed on. And the one thing that I found I couldn't find in the Bible is an exception clause for cops. It's not there. If I read the Bible correctly, God has ordained government. That means law enforcement officers, peace officers need to be doing it better and cleaner than everybody else out there. We're supposed to be the examples, and we're not. But that's why we want to change things. The guys that discipled me, it wasn't just like a month or so and then it was done. It was 15 years in the making. This was every week. This went on without fail. This is what we want to instill back into our officers and our chapters across the nation. Because if you're doing this one-on-one discipleship, then it filters into all three shifts. Remember, this is a 24/7 operation. It never sleeps. It never stops. It never slows down. So to get the guys trained, we have to have guys on each shift able to do it. And that's a huge responsibility. But that's why I serve. It was this ministry that taught me my spiritual disciplines, I guess you would say. Reading God's word, training others to go train others. True leadership. If you train one to go train another one, you're leading. And that has an eternal impact as these guys pass it on one-to-one. What I would like to see with this ministry is that if something terrible should happen, that it would end tomorrow. The men and women that are out there on the streets would continue this ministry because they've been trained to take the gospel one to one with each other. So what's next for us? Well, we have a huge project coming up, and it, of course, it involves Bibles. And we decided that it was about time for us to create a Bible, or not create, but have one that came directly from us. And I worked with Tyndall House, and a long story short, Tyndall House sent me a Bible, said, take a look at this and see if this is what you're looking for. And when I got it, they said, they had a little post-it on it, said, we can get this without the filament. And I read that out loud to the guy that works with me in the office. He said, filament, let me see that Bible. And it was just simply a thin-lined Bible like you would carry to church. That's all it was. It's not a big, bulky thing. It's just something nice. And I let him see it, and he opened it up, and his eyes got big. He said, do you know what this is? And I went, no. He said, this is a Bible library. I said, what are you talking about? He said, you see the little diamond beside the page number? You download the Filament app, and you put your phone over this little diamond, and it pulls up all the study notes for that particular page. Not only does it do that, but there's tons of other stuff in there. I mean, it's a total library of biblical information, just like you were carrying a 3-pound study Bible, but it's all right there. And so I immediately called the rep back. I said, oh, this is the Bible we want, but we've got to have it with the filament. And so we're in the process of making this Bible now. It's going to have some of our things in it. But if we equip all of our members with one of these Bibles, we've equipped them with Right Now Media already. Inside the Bible, we're going to have them place the 1-year Bible daily reading plan. We have just equipped these officers around the nation with everything they need in their hands to go do discipleship, one-to-one. And when that happens, then we can concentrate on going back to having more mini conferences around the country to bring them in and train them in other things that there is. This Bible is going to look like a thin blue line. That's all it's going to look like. Now, a thin blue line, for those of you that don't know, is a universal police symbol. It's a black rectangle or a black square with a thin blue line through it. That's all it is. Good people don't know what that is. Cops and bad people do. And the media has tried to say that that's an illicit thing, that it stands for a code of silence, or it's got racial implications, but it doesn't. It doesn't. It stands for the thin blue line of law enforcement officers that literally stand the gap between chaos and civility. And we understand this. And even in the Bible, I've even written a definition of it. A lot of times cops will get a chip on their shoulder thinking nobody cares. And I have to remind them that it's not the public's responsibility to care about us. The public's responsibility is to go live happy lives with their families and children. Our responsibility is to stand that gap between chaos and civility and absorb everything Satan throws at us so it doesn't seep over into your families, into your life, into your world. That's what we do. And if we get to the point that we think people don't care, I don't know if you've ever seen a police funeral, but the public does care, because we'll have kids out there from first grade waving flags to our oldest veterans. We'll have every race and nationality that's in this country that will line the streets. Yeah, the public does care when it counts. It sure does. But we've got to keep our thinking right. And it's such a bombardment of evil. It's hard to do that unless you've got people in there reminding you and pushing you and telling you, you know, people do care. And we have a job to do. And our job is to protect the public. This is not a fundraising talk by no means, but I never talk to a group of people without giving them the opportunity to understand how they can help, how they can help this ministry. When you help this ministry, you're helping cops across the nation. This Bible project that we've got is going to cost us anywhere from $23,600 to $42,700. We have to order at least 2,000 of these Bibles, which we're getting ready to do in faith. So, for anyone that would like to invest, would like to see, these go across the country, Glenn has all my information. Joe Wheelis has all my information. You can get in touch with them, and they can tell you how to get in touch with me, and I'll tell you further. But I always throw this invitation out there because it is an opportunity. It is an opportunity to invest in something greater than ourselves. Because if we do change the face of law enforcement, we can change the entire country. And you think, well, that's awful big. Why not have a big vision? Why not have a big vision? Why not train cops to be able to go into the neighborhoods and do like the scripture says, do good first. That's our first calling, is to do good in Romans chapter 13. Everything else comes after that. So gentlemen, ladies, I will open the floor up now if we have time for any questions, if anybody's got any questions.
Hey, Paul, before we get started with that, why don't you go on and give us the contact information and website or anything that you can direct people to?
Our website is simply fcpo.org. That is a simple website. And my email address is just about as simple. It's simply paul@fcpo.org.
Thank you so much, Paul. And what a powerful message. I don't think the average person gives the police officers credit for what they deal with on a daily basis. The stress we can't imagine. Our military men and women all around the globe are under stress, but not like the local police officers.
It's every day. It's not just here and there. It's every day, and there's not taking anything away from the military. What they do is tremendous, but it's not serving a tour and then being done. It's a career. It's 25, 30 years of your life.
What else can we do other than contribute money to support the police officers? I try to always have made a comment to the military men and women when I would see them in uniform and thank them for serving our country. But I've recently now also started including the men in blue, the men and women in blue, and that they're the forgotten ones, and probably feel more alone than ever. Other than thanking them for their service, what else could we say to them that might be helpful?
Well, let me give everyone a warning. If you get a phone call from something in law enforcement, don't give to it on the phone. Most of them are scams. Don't do it, because they call me. They call me, and then when I start talking to them, usually I get hung up on. They're scams. When you see guys out, just tell them thank you, and expect this. They're going to look at you weird because people don't do that. It's not done, and the first thing that crosses their mind is what do you want? And in today's climate, they're afraid for people to approach them. I mean, you don't know anymore. We've had, we talk about the ones killed, but just take Chicago. Chicago has had 71 officers shot or shot at this year. They all didn't die, but that's just one city. So thanking them, it doesn't get any better than that. There's not much else you can do. It's a profession that's on an island. It's the most bizarre thing. And I used to tell people, I wish I hated my job so I could quit and go be a millionaire. But the guys that don't quit, they can't quit. It's what they're called to do. They literally cannot quit, no matter what goes on, because that's where God's placed them. And they're not going to quit. And they're going to continue to do the job and roll with the punches, as they come along. Also know that when you see these things on the TV, remember, if we put all of the things that we've seen on TV, it would be so minuscule to the bad behavior of cops. And all of it's not bad behavior. Just because a police officer has to shoot somebody, and I say have to, it doesn't mean they're wrong. But when the media takes one incident and they play it on all channels and they play it 24/7 and they continue to play it for months on end, you think it's every day. It's not. It's not. I mean, can you imagine the contacts law enforcement officers have across this nation in a 24-hour time period with people? And the complaints that come in are so minuscule.
Thank you, Paul. Marcia, where's your partner Rick this morning?
I don't know. I mean, he must have worked late last night, so I haven't heard from him.
Well, what question do you have for Paul this morning, or comment?
Paul, this has been a tumultuous year for policemen, and I was curious as to when something happens in a city that gets such national attention, whether it's Minneapolis or Portland or whatever, what ripple effects does it have in communities of policemen across the country?
Well, when the bad apple spoils the whole bunch, and even if it's not a bad apple, the ripple effect, everybody picks up on what's going on. We've been lucky in Chattanooga. We've got a good sheriff's department and police department, and they've handled things real well through this time. But like in Portland, when we see things like that, it makes cops, it weakens cops, it infuriates cops, all across the nation, because what happens to one happens to all of us. And what people don't know that went on in Portland, some of the things, and I've talked with officers in Portland, what the news wasn't showing was at night when they were tearing down statues and literally destroying the city. They were also doing pagan ritual sacrifices on those statues. And the guys were telling me, said they have never seen evil just running loose like they were watching in Portland and Seattle, and having to stand there and watch it, pretty much guard it. And so, police departments are in a different shape than sheriff's departments. Now, we deal with all law enforcement, local, state, federal, sheriff's departments, everybody. The sheriff is elected, and all the people he has to please is you guys. That's all he has to please. But a chief of police is usually hired by a mayor or a city council or a city manager. So he has to answer to those people, and at the same time try to protect his officers, and keep their morale up. And if he messes up, he loses his job. And that's an awful position to be in nowadays. In fact, what once, everybody wanted to be a chief, there's chief jobs out there all over the country right now because nobody wants to fill them. And we are losing men and women in law enforcement. We're having massive numbers of retirements. And law enforcement right now, most cities the size of Chattanooga and bigger have decent retirements where guys can really retire like I did, and have a decent little income coming in. And you get out and there's good attrition. And that's healthy for a police department. We've got that. And then we have guys right now retiring when they get their tenure in. So they leave, they're not drawing a retirement right now. It'll be when they retire, they'll draw it. But they leave and start doing something else. And then we have the guys that don't even make it to tenure. So that has left a huge vacuum in law enforcement. And the stuff you see, the bad stuff that cops do, you see on TV and stuff, it all reverts back to training. And because of this huge vacuum, I've kind of coined the phrase, we have the undertrained training the untrained to do the unthinkable, because we've lost our senior law enforcement guys. They're leaving. The training's not malicious, it's just not complete like it should be. And we're going to suffer for that for years to come.
Joe Wheelis, and thank you for suggesting that Paul speak today. I appreciate it, and thank you. Joe introduced me to Paul a number of years ago, and appreciate that. So what have you got to say?
Paul, I on occasion, and more in the past, I guess, and really haven't had the recent opportunity, but sometimes I do obviously run into or meet a police officer, and my first question to them is, are you familiar with your organization? And in many cases, they are not. Mm-hmm. And I don't mean that derogatorily, please don't misunderstand me in this situation, but it's also trying to, you never get enough pub or get to the people so that they say, oh yes, absolutely, I know that organization well. Is there a simplistic way to try to steer them or to point them in a direction that would be favorable as you might see it?
Yeah, and what you're saying there, I totally understand it, because it's something we've dealt with for 46 years. We can't go around publicizing in police departments, because heaven forbid we bring in some sort of biblical truth or something to keep the guys straight. They don't want God or Bible in government, yet they want people in government to act like Christians. And it just doesn't make any sense to me. So it is by word of mouth. It basically that, and if you drive them to our website, that's the big thing. They'll go to the website. And there's a lot of information on our website that catches their attention. So that's around the country. It's word of mouth. I wish there was a way we could publicize it, but there's not. And I wish there was a simplistic way. A long time ago, back when I first started, there was only one police magazine in the country, and it was called Police Product News. And you could advertise in that, and every cop in the country would see it. But now there's so much stuff out there that, advertising is almost impossible. So if you just drive them to our website, that's a big deal.
Okay. Well, I as you know, I appreciate all you do and what you do and why you do it. And it's a message that we all individually need to try to permeate in the community and in any way we particularly can, because it makes for a better police officer, it makes for a better community, all of those things, as you know. And you know what I think of your group and what you're doing.
If we could teach cops true love and compassion, that doesn't weaken what they do. That gives them great strength to be able to operate like that. when they can start looking at other people as human beings and created by God just like they are, things change, and that doesn't weaken what they have to do. It just gives them more tools in their toolbox, because there's always going to be evil out there. But you know, they try to make cops, they come on the job and it's like, okay, I'm leaving family, God, everything else behind. I got to do my time, and it doesn't work that way. You are who you are. And we had one of our national presidents. He's rolled off the board, but when he became president of the national board, by the time he got back to his city, his chief already knew about it. And the chief called him to the office and congratulated him that he was the president for the national board for the Fellowship of Christian Peace Officers. And he told him, he said, but I don't want you doing any of that Christian stuff on the job. And it just crushed this guy. And I said, don't you wish that you could have the presence of mind to go, okay, chief, so just to make sure I got this right, you want me to start lying, stealing, you want me to have adulterous affairs on my wife, cheating? And of course he would say, no. So you don't want me to lie, steal, or cheat on my wife? No. Well, chief, that's that Christian stuff. What is it that you don't want me to do? Because that's what you run into. And we have to, I would like to say that we could go to the leadership and change the leadership, but we can't. We have to work from the ground up and develop guys through their entire career that one day they will be in these big positions of leadership with the same attitude that we instill in them right now.
Well, the amazing thing to me, Paul, is that so many police officers in the job that they have to do on a daily basis, it usually encounters someone who has made a mistake or erred in their judgment, so forth and so on, whether it's speeding or whatever it may be. And consequently, the first thing the officer hears is probably a lie. So you multiply the number of encounters that a police officer makes every day in the job that he's trying to do, is somebody trying to lie their way out of or misrepresent and so forth and so on. And you think about dealing with that day in, day out, every single day. That's a hell of a load to deal with, and just to sort through it all.
Then when you come home and you have teenage children who are going to lie to you,
Yeah,
and they're not good at it, professional liars all day, and I've told my children, they were just cursed, to have me as their father or stepfather. I even told one of my daughters one time, I said, if I tell you I believe you, will you just stop? Will you stop telling me that story?
Hey, Coach Dan, you as a volunteer get involved in law enforcement to a certain extent. You have any comments today?
I do actually. First, brother Joe, it's good to see you, my man. And
thank you, Dan. Same here. It's been a while.
Thank you for introducing us to Paul. Joe's gift is definitely a connector of people.
Yes, he is.
Paul, outstanding job here. Thank you for your service, and not just your service, but your vulnerability, because this message really hit close to home. Those that know me, I spent 17 years as a paramedic, and the last 6 I spent with a SWAT team in the sheriff's office.
Oh, wow. Here in town?
No, upstate New York.
Oh, okay. Okay.
And all of this it's amazingly true. And it hits home, not only the truth, but the vulnerability, but the suicide and the can't quit attitude.
Mm-hmm.
And I was one of those statistics where I lost a relationship of 15 years because I worked too much. And I also built a business on the side. So I worked my side business and I did the job. And that, wow, it took its toll. And you mentioned a life-changing event which turned you to Christ. And that was the same thing here, because I think we go into it, and I had a talk with my brother, who's also, he's a 22-year veteran. And we said, you know, you remember the days when we first got into this and we thought we were going to go out there and change the world. You know, we thought we were going to be heroes, and we thought this and we thought that. And here we are 20 some years later, and we're like, wow, what were we thinking? You know, because the stress of the lies, the stuff we see every day, it does take its toll. And it wasn't until I lost that relationship that I was able to get straightened out myself and find Christ and find good people and actually learn to appreciate people and learn to love people again. Yeah. Because I certainly didn't have that after all those years. And what's funny is, to this day, my brother's still in law enforcement, and I'm no longer. But he's running for sheriff. He just made his announcement 2 weeks ago, and I'm like, what is wrong with you, man? Because like, he knows, and we talk about the stresses all the time. He's like, it's, you know, that's what his grandfather did. He was under sheriff for a bunch of years. It's in the blood, and it works. So I thank you for this talk. It's definitely every bit of its truth. And you're right. People, you know, people don't see this side, and it's tough to understand unless you're right in the middle of it. So really good talk. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Kelly, my goodness, I have discriminated against our one. Well, no, we've got two females this morning. We got Marcia, and I forgot about you, Kelly. I knew you were getting ready for something. So, but do you have a comment or a question for Paul?
Thanks, Glenn. Yeah, I've just been trying to be a good listener because I am so naive about so much of this. And, you know, over this past year, I think my biggest challenge has been, where is the correct information about what's been going on in cities like Portland and so on. So I always like just listening and hearing other perspectives. I think for me, the question that I would ask is, as an average person, what do you think that we could do to be of help? And where would you go if you were an average person to get the correct information on maybe what's going around in your community? So I live south of Nashville, and so Nashville had things happen this year that I never thought I'd see in downtown Nashville, and that's where I work when it's a non-COVID world. The other thing is, I am thankful that you shared about the Bible, and that is an area that we can support. I cannot imagine being in this life right now without some semblance of faith, especially being in that kind of role. So thanks for taking time to share that. But I would be curious to know, in your opinion, a good place to kind of get a better perspective on the news, and then if there's anything else kind of an average person could do to be of help.
Well, that's sad, because there's really nothing average people can do. There's no mechanism to do anything. And I mean, nobody's ever really thought about it. And in law enforcement, if somebody is doing something good for you, the first thing that clicks in is why. You know, you start thinking, what do they want? Because everybody wants to use us and abuse us. And their trust factor, there's zero trust out there anywhere. You know, prayer is a big, big thing, you know, because God will hear your prayers and he will answer them. As far as getting the truth, good luck, Kelly. I have not found
I'm laughing out loud right
now. I wish there was some place that you could get the truth. You can get the truth from us because we don't put out the news, but you know, we have law enforcement contacts pretty much around the country, you know, and these are the guys on the ground that see what's going on. There's no political talk in them. They don't have time for it. And but as far as getting the truth about what's going on, you know, I don't know where you could find it because I've not seen it. I've not seen it yet. And it's really, really sad, because the truth could help us correct things. And you know, I don't know what news media's agendas are. I don't know their thought process, you know, but it's always been antagonistic for the most part against law enforcement, and I don't get it. because they will call us immediately when somebody starts shoving them around and pushing them out of the way, and they want us there to protect them. And we will. We will. But I wish I had an answer for you, Kelly, but I really don't.
It's
You
all
know,
about,
it's interesting you say that. One of the phrases that I have used all year, and I've done it with talks and clients and so on, is one is assume noble intent, because I think we all need a little bit more of that lately. And another one is you steer where you stare. I read that in a book in January, and I felt like that was very providential that I read that. And, you know, that is one of the things that I can say is, in so many cases, all of these organizations, no matter what side of the fence you're on, are there to get your attention. They are there to stir you up. And that's something that I've just continued to remind myself of, is you steer where you stare. And that's just been a very helpful thing for me this year. So thank you for your candid feedback. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Kelly.
Kelly, I would add in, if you seek, you will find. I mean, I don't believe anything I see on the news. I haven't even watched mainstream media in 8 years now. But the fact is, the truth is on the ground. It's the boots on the ground. And while there are a few bad apples here and there, you'll find out that when you actually seek the truth out, you will find it. And we see this, even what's amazing to me is coming from the emergency services. I would be on something as simple as an accident scene, a car crash, and then you'd see it reported on the news that evening, and it wasn't even close to what happened. So if they can screw up something that simple, I mean, imagine what they're doing now, twisting things and just the way they dramatize things. It's disheartening, to say the least.
Yeah, I hear you, Dan. I was interviewed in December of last year. A good friend of mine was tragically murdered in Nashville, and the local news knew I knew her and so on, and they knew I was able to do speaking, and so they came out and they wanted to, you know, interview me about her. And I know I wore that poor young lady out, because I told her, I said, this is what I'm willing to say. This is what I feel like is incredibly important. Don't you screw it up. And I did it in the nicest way I could, but I wanted her memory to be noticed. I wanted the impact that she'd had in the community to be noticed. And that was what I really wanted to make sure to talk about. I was so impressed with that young lady, who's since left the Nashville market for a bigger market. But it was because I was so skeptical of making sure that it came out in the right way. So Dan, thank you. Sorry, Marcia, I didn't realize I cut you off.
Yeah.
No problem. Speaking of the truth, I would be curious to hear from your perspective, which I know you've got people all over the country. What has this new push to defund the police? How, in reality, how is that? What's happening, and how is that affecting police departments across the country?
Well, the larger departments are losing hundreds of personnel because of the defunding. And, you know, once again, it is people outside the profession telling the profession what they ought to do. Now, that's the way it operates. I don't know of any politicians that have ever been a police officer. I'm sure there's some out there, especially in local, you know, but our national politicians, you know, we go back to Ferguson, and we had the hands up, don't shoot, you know, looking for a slogan. Well, found out that was all a lie. Every bit of it was a lie. And it may have received 15, 20 seconds on the national news. I mean, it was a 100% lie. Everything that the news put out was wrong. Everything. So that didn't stick. And there's been other slogans that come up. But all of a sudden, somebody comes up with defund the police. And politicians think, oh, well, I can take money away from them, and that'll make all these people happy, and they'll vote for me, because they don't care about us. Sadly, I don't think many of them care about you either. You know, they care about getting back in the office. And that's why there's such a clash between law enforcement or public servants and politicians, because we deal with politicians daily. And we see how they are. And we see how they are when they shake your hand, and we hear their vile language when they talk to us behind closed doors. And I've been there. And that's firsthand information. That's not rumor. And but they their whole philosophy is just get votes, get back in office, get back in office, get back in office. And I mean, we watch the hypocrisy going across the nation. What you're seeing now is what we've known forever, and now they're taking away manpower, which is doing nothing but crippling us, and it's just demoralizing. As far as morale, it just crushes you. They continue to do the job, but if your morale's bad, I tell people this way, before I had my life-changing experience, would you want old Paul or new Paul answering a call for service with you? I guarantee you want new Paul, because old Paul just hated everything and everybody. People say, well, were you a racist? I hated everybody. Nobody told me the truth. Yeah. And it was terrible. And it made me miserable. And it wasn't until I got the real truth that all that changed. And I started seeing people as human beings. I literally started seeing people through the eyes of Jesus and what he saw. And until we can get that, the guys have got to get that. What's going on is going to go on forever. We're not going to change politicians, And the defund, well, that is just ludicrous. Crime is running rampant and we're going to take away manpower. Hey, great idea. I don't know where you got that idea, but it's not going to work. It can't work. My idea, I would think right here in Chattanooga, I honestly think that the politicians need to push for our firefighters and police officers and EMTs and first responders here in Hamilton County to be the highest paid in the state. And once they're the highest paid, the public can make some tremendous demands on them. And they're going to come through because they are being well paid and taken care of. But when you take away manpower, when you cut their pensions, when you cut their salaries and don't give them raises and then make demands, that doesn't go over well. They do them because they're orders, but they don't do them with zeal and gusto. They do them because they have to. And there's a big difference in that when they show up at your house.
So what is happening here in Chattanooga? Has some of the funding been cut?
Yeah, from what I understand, the mayor took $150,000 roughly from the police department and hired somebody in his office. Yeah. That'll fix it.
Paul, I love studying people and their growth, shall we say. You're referring to the old Paul and the new Paul, the old Paul that just didn't like anyone. How did Paul like himself?
Well, that's a great question. I'm glad you asked that, because when I tell people, when I'm really giving my testimony, I will tell people how I did. I hated everybody. I just did. I come to work, did my job. That was it. No compassion, no thought, no nothing. But the guy I really hated the most was the guy I looked at in the mirror every morning when I was getting ready. That's the guy I hated, because I didn't like the way I was and I didn't know how to get out of it.
There's a great book. I forget the author, The Man in the Mirror. Have you ever read that?
Yeah.
Good book. Brother Richie, we haven't heard from you. Any comments or questions you might have?
Not really, as far as any questions. I mean, I pretty much been absorbed in some of Paul's conversations. I guess the question I might have is do you just share these Bibles, yearly Bibles, to any officers that come on, or do they purchase them? What's the mechanism there? And if somebody wanted to get involved with that locally, are there chapters throughout the state, or are you guys just located down in Chattanooga?
Well, we have 257 chapters across the country, and not all of them are active. This started, 46 years ago. But this year alone, we have chartered and reactivated 13 chapters just in this year. With the things that are happening, I think it's driving guys towards us simply because they have no place else to go. As far as the Bibles, we do a number of things. The one-year Bibles we give to every member that comes on board. That's part of their package they get. There's a lot of other things they get also, including right now media that we pay for. We just give it to them. We also, for the last year, from November to November, we gave away over 2,000 Bibles to spouses of law enforcement officers. And it was kind of strange how it happened. I came into my office one day and I had 50 emails in my inbox. And I was looking at them and I thought I'd been hacked. And as I was reading them, I could tell it was spouses of law enforcement officers, and they were wanting us to send them this Bible that we give away for free so they could give it to their husbands. And I thought, well, that's really great, except one thing, we don't do that, and I don't know what you're talking about. So I kept reading, and finally a lady sent a picture. And there's a Bible that the American Bible Society does called Strength for the Streets. And it looks like a thin blue line on the Bible. It has a real law enforcement appeal to it. And we did give it away. We give it away every year at the Law Enforcement Memorial Week in Washington, D.C. We send a mission team to Washington inside what they call Tent City, which is a huge fenced-in area where tents are set up, and all the police wares come in, and you can eat in there, but it's for law enforcement only. There's over 10,000 cops in Washington during this week. So we send a mission team up, and the American Bible Society would give us these Bibles to give away. And what happened was, when we were there in 2019, because they didn't have it this year, one of the guys from the mission team went home and purchased a case of those Bibles. And his chapter was giving them out to people at a Law Enforcement Appreciation Day. And a lady come up and said, "Oh, this is really wonderful." Said, "How can I get more of these?" And her words to me were, "That nice man from FCPO said all we had to do was contact FCPO at fcpo.org, and they'll send you one for free." So she goes to her Wives Behind the Badge Facebook page and shares that, and here they come. And I sat there and I had to sort of chuckle, and I went, "Okay, Lord, you've put this in our face and we're going to do it. And you're going to have to provide." And that was over 2,000 Bibles ago, just for that project, just giving away that Bible. So there's a number of ways that we do. We give away different things. The Bible that I'm talking about now is very unique. And it's if you want to see what I'm talking about, each one of you can download the Filament app on your phone, Filament. And when you download that, it will show you an example in Genesis of what it does. But it does that with every book in the Bible, with every page that's in this Bible. And that's why we're so desperate to do this, because if we put this Bible that I'm talking about now in officers' hands, which is a total study Bible plus, and we give them Right Now media, and we're working on some other discipleship tools. I've got some guys writing material right now. We will be providing them with everything they need to move forward, even if something, heaven forbid, should ever happen to this ministry. Should the government decide there's not going to be any more 501c3s, the churches are going to pay taxes, who knows what's coming. But, I want them to be able to continue with their mission. And this Bible, it's $29.99 for each Bible. But if we get 2,000 of them, we get a 61% discount. And if we're able to purchase 5,000 of them, we get a 71% discount. And that drops the price to $8.55 a Bible from $30. So that's what we're headed towards.
What's your deadline for hopefully achieving the goal of raising the money for this?
Well, there is no deadline because it's going to have to be a continual thing.
Mm-hmm.
Once we start this, if we get the 2,000 Bibles, that will get us enough to give all of our back members that we can get in contact with one, and a few to move forward with our new members and giving them away. But we're going to have to replenish that right away. If we get the 5,000, that's going to give us some cushion. But we will be raising for these Bibles from now on.
You know, Paul, earlier you mentioned the crime in Chicago, the number of police officers shot and whatever. I can remember a number of years back, I read an article back when I used to subscribe to the Chattanooga Times Free Press. I no longer do. That kind of referred to Chattanooga as the little Chicago. Statistically, how do we compare with Chicago and our crime rate on a per capita basis?
Well, we made, I think we made the top 25 again, violent cities in America per capita. At one time, in 1 year, we were listed as the most biblically knowledgeable area in the country and made the top 10 for most violent crime per capita, in the country. And people go, how can that be? Well, if you were Satan and you had a war against God, where do you want to fight the battle? Where God's the strongest. So don't look for that to change. And, our violence, it's always been there. None of this is new. None of it's new. Even though the news will try to make it new, it's not new. It's been around for a while. I do want to say this while I'm thinking about it, and I've thought about it several times and forgot it during our conversations here. Just something to watch for on the news when there's a police-involved shooting anywhere in the country, and the news commentator will come up and go, they're investigating this as a homicide. Well, they're all homicides. Every death is investigated as a homicide, even if a police officer is the one that pulled the trigger. It's either justified or it's not justified. It's a homicide. So they throw that in there for the drama. It's not drama. It is. It's a fact. It's being investigated as a homicide. Homicide detectives are investigating it to see if it's justified or not. And that's what they do with every homicide that's committed. So just something to watch for the media. You can laugh at it now. Go, yep, that's right. They do investigate them as homicides.
Do you guys not get any support from any church groups? I would think that this would be a win-win for, various church organizations to be involved with.
Yeah, Bob, more and more that we have churches kind of coming on board, and that is because of our chapters. And, guys that are in churches, they'll go see their pastor and stuff, and they'll start launching a chapter, and that church will open up the doors to them. But as far as just, churches out there seeking us, no, because, be quite frank, they've got their own bills to pay. This is really from the members and generous society that we get our funding. It's all donations.
All with COVID now turning the world as a whole upside down now. Church attendance obviously is way off because it's illegal in many states for churches to meet because of the social distancing requirements. Has this caused a fall off in the support for your organization?
No, we've actually increased
Wonderful.
in these trying times.
That
And
was the
honestly,
response I was hoping I would get.
I honestly believe it's because the guys realize they actually have no one out there that's with them, and they're looking and they're searching, and that's what's driving them to us. We get calls and emails just about every day. Guys just put in Christian police, or they're just looking for anything, and of course they find our website, and that drives them to us.
What if those of us that want to make a difference, what if we were to print up, most of us have business cards. What if we had a little business card that when we see a policeman, we could give them, that just all it was just the Christian Peace Officers Association contact information. Thank them for their service and say, hey, you might want to check this out.
That would be huge, because they will check it out. Their curiosity will kill them. They will have to go.
Could you give us a blank card or something that if we wanted to individually see about getting some printed to have, could you give us a template, shall we say?
Yeah.
If you do that, if anybody wants it, let me know, or you've got Paul's.
That's a great idea. I've never even thought of that.
I was just thinking of a way that we could help spread the word.
That would be huge. And like I said, they'll have to look at it.
Yeah.
Have to go. They won't be able to stand it.
Mm-hmm.
We don't touch the red button.
Yeah. Right. Hey, Brother Aram, we haven't heard from you this morning, even though I am a little upset with you that you wouldn't share your oatmeal this morning.
Well, good morning. First, Mr. Lee, thank you for your service.
Thank you.
Yeah, it must be tough. But yeah, Glenn, I think your idea is really good. I usually try to thank officers when I see them, and people that are veterans. I have a friend of mine does prints business cards, and a really reasonable price. Last batch of business cards I ordered from him, I think it was 1,000 cards for $30. So, we can use him to print these cards. I think that's a great idea.
Well, why don't we, any of you that would like to participate in this, why don't you've got my contact information, let me know, and then I'll work with Aram about getting them printed. I want some. This is a mastermind, and this is one of the things that comes from a mastermind. I'd never thought of such an idea. And some of you may have an even better idea of how we could help spread the word about this organization.
Glenn, I would challenge anyone that owns a business to be associated with a cause. Okay. Businesses that are successful, most of them are associated with some kind of a cause. For example, my business up in New York, we were involved with Toys for Tots, and customers are more likely to do business with a business that's connected to some sort of a cause that they believe in. So if you own a business, why not get connected to this cause? I would challenge any business owner to do that.
Good challenge there, Coach Dan. Good challenge. Paul, something else that, I mentioned to you and your organization, as well as for our group. I think most of you know I've been affiliated with the John Maxwell team as an executive director for a good while now. And John's most recent book, which will be coming out in January, which I will have privilege to have a little bit of advanced excerpts from, but the Maxwell organization is promoting, the name of the book is Change Your World. And it's basically promoting the concept of having table discussions because the Maxwell team is all over the world. So I have volunteered through the organization for them to send people to me from any part of the world that will coordinate with my time zone, that I would facilitate a roundtable discussion and study of the book, Change Your World. Plus, I'm going to do one on my own. So let me see if I can get screen share, and I'll bring it up if you want to, any of you want to look at it. And let's see. Let me see. I've got, now let me see if I can find here is the website, Change Our World, Change Our World, not your world, Change Our World. I've met Rob Hoskins also, who co-authored the book with John Maxwell, but you can go on there and learn about it. And I think probably, I forget what they're suggesting, but 10 at the most is what I have found works good in a group like this. So if any of you would like to participate in my group, if you would email me that you would like to, it's glenn@glennhodges.com. And then also let me know your preference as far as time of day. Now, I will not do late at night. I'm a morning person. I prefer mornings, but yet I could do early afternoon. So if you would, and then I'll go with whatever the largest number is, but it's the first 10 that register. And then Paul, again, you can share this with your group, and I'll be glad to do something specifically for your organization.
Thanks.
If they would like me, but they can go on the website there. I believe that tells about it. I'm not sure if it's got the information there telling how to sign up to be a let's see, to be a part of of a mastermind or table discussion group. I'm not sure, but anyway, just throw that in.
Glenn,
Yes.
Glenn,
Yes, it's yours.
can I make or throw out a suggestion that we might toss around or consider?
Sure.
And while you're talking about that, and in light of the fact that Paul is here, it might be perhaps an idea to ask Paul if he has somebody, a local police officer that might want to be a part of that. And that I realize that's time from away from their families and so forth and so on. But that, and the other part of that problem also is the fact that sometimes they're limited about what they can say or not say, or that the powers to be or want to make sure that they don't embarrass anybody. But it would seemingly maybe make sense if we had the boots on the street guy that might be in our little meeting or our group, that we get the story of as it is, the real thing, that they're going to insert along the way some information that would create the greater need for us to support the police officer and so forth, and what they're daily contending with.
Are you saying, you're suggesting that if we could get some representatives of the Chattanooga Police Department to be a part of our program and sharing their experiences? Is that?
Yes, and
okay.
Maybe we tie it into the the book or some relation to that in a way. It's only helping them to get their message and what they're contending with in a small microcosm kind of a way.
Well, the way this thing is set up is that's the whole idea is and that's the reason I forget what Maxwell's guidelines are. Actually, my preference is 6 to 8, but I think the demand's going to be such that we'll probably have to go with about 10. But I haven't seen. I forget what they're recommending. But the whole idea is where people can have within a group that they feel comfortable can share their thoughts, because it's going to be very interactive. All I'll do is facilitate it.
Yeah.
I'll have guidelines that the Maxwell team has put together to help us get the most out of the book. Well, folks, it's 2 minutes after we've gone over, but we should go over a little bit since I fumbled this morning. Which site did all the sites have the wrong link, or which one was it that you went to that was wrong? Those of you that had trouble. Dan, were you going on the Meetup site or Facebook?
Yeah, I was on the Meetup site, Glenn. I clicked on that site and that was incorrect. And hate to cut you guys short. I got to run, but Paul, thank you so much for your message of truth and vulnerability and faith. Takes courage to do that. So I appreciate that, especially from your perspective.
Thank you. And Merry Christmas if we don't see you before, and tell your lovely wife hello. And I hope she and the baby all are well and continue to, and as the baby continues to grow, I forgot, is it a little girl or boy?
No, I've got one little girl who's going on 30 years old already. So, well, she thinks she's 30, but this one's a boy. So hopefully he doesn't turn out like me and make the mistakes that I did. But yeah, I'm excited.
Well, he's going to have a tough time if he makes the mistakes you did. He's going to get his behind kicked a few times.
Right.
So,
right.
Well, and I think that change the world goes in quite well with a little phrase I came up for our group, Chattanooga Self-Improvement, where we listen, we share, we ask questions, and learn in an effort to help each of us to be the best version of ourselves, thus helping to make the world a better place to live. So with that in mind, Paul, thank you so much. This is for your time that you've given today and for the valuable information you've shared with us. I think you've touched the heart of everyone that's had the opportunity to participate today. And I think it will touch a lot more people as I get this posted, the replay, and I'll send you the link. So thank you so much. I'm wishing each of you a very Merry Christmas, a Happy New Year. Our speaker for the first speaker of next year will be Tom Glenn, the CEO and president of Elders Ace Hardware. So it should be good. So thank you so much. And remember, your day will be just as good as you visualize it.